How's it going, my SAAB friends? My name is Gary, and this is my channel, Weakest of Weeks. If you love SAAB stuff, you have definitely come to the right place. And if you're a first-time viewer, consider subscribing because I have a ton of how-to stuff out there, and especially SAAB-related things. So today, what we are doing is working on my 2008 SAAB 93 Aero. And while I was recently working on the hub bearing, doing a how-to video on that, click up top here, I found out I have a bad bushing. So it's a rear lower lateral bushing that goes to the hub or the knuckle assembly. Now you can purchase that whole knuckle assembly with a bushing in there, but I can only imagine what that would cost from SAAB. But fortunately, there's a cheaper solution, which is pressing out the old bushing and pressing in a new one. So that's actually what we will be doing today, so stay tuned. Here is the right rear hub assembly, and that is the bushing in question, this lower lateral to this knuckle bushing. So it's actually not part of this lower arm. It's an aluminum arm that the coil spring rests in, but it's actually pressed into this rear knuckle. So this side of the bushing isn't awfully terrible. It's definitely starting to go and disintegrate, but on this front side, if you can tell, that is by far the worst portion of it. Now, right now, it's actually not making any noise. If this bushing is bad enough, this whole assembly will kind of clank back and forth. Fortunately, at this point in time, my car's not that bad, but because I was recently in here, tore all of this stuff off to replace that hub bearing, I figured I might as well go ahead, order the bushings, and change those. So that's what we'll be doing today. Here are some of the tools that we need. There'll definitely be more that will add to this, but a basic 18mm socket. You'll need a corresponding ratcheting and an external E18 bit like that, as well as a puller of some sort. I'm choosing to use a gear style puller. Part number is right up top there. Basically, you go to your local parts store, give them this part number, you put some money down to rent it, and then once you return it, you'll get all your money back. And there's actually a couple different puller options, but this is the one that I've read online that was recommended, so we'll give it a shot. This is what it looks like, and I'll show you how we're going to use this to pull off that bushing. But to begin disassembly, we'll want to jack underneath this lateral arm and put a little bit of compression underneath it. And then now we're able to back out this bolt. Once this bolt is removed, we can lower this arm down. That way we get better access to get the press in here to remove this bushing. Backside bolt is removed, and actually I decided to use a 18mm wrench in behind here and use a large 1/2-inch ratchet on the front side of the bolt with the E18 bit. I just found it easier that way because there's not a lot of space back here with the whole rotor assembly here. So now that this is loose, we can go ahead and knock this bolt out. So you can actually push down on this arm and fully remove this coil spring if you really wanted to, but I don't think it's necessary at all because we have a pretty good amount of room around here. But here you can see the issue is that the rubber is just petrified and crumbling with this bushing. And it's only a matter of time before this bushing fully goes and the whole rear suspension has too much play to it, and then it just ends up clanking and clunking in the back here. So I think we got it at a good time. It's just pressing out this old one. Assembly of the 3-jaw puller, relatively simple. You have the reversible jaws. I'm deciding to use the bigger ones because there are 3 smaller ones. And then also a point to note is that each end of the reversible jaw is actually a different size. So this one is smaller than this one, so I'm actually going to be using the bigger style on the end. Now you have this like claw foot looking deal here. The pin threads right through it, and now you can actually offset them. I'm actually going to do the 2 closest right here and then have the 3rd right there. You take the reversible jaw, take the elbow plates, slide a shoulder bolt through it, take the other elbow plate, thread the nut on the end, and that is basically it. It's just all about the setup and how you want to do it. So We have these two right here. Now this one I'm going to place right there. Bolt goes through it, threads on the end, finger tight should be good, and this is pretty much the setup. Alright, here are the jaws. I decided to use these holes right here as opposed to these ones just so it actually extends the jaws out a little bit more. And then what we'll use to actually push up against this bushing, because you don't want to push against this actual metal collar because you'll push that right through and then the rubber in the outer metal ring will stay inside this knuckle. So what I am devising is a 1/2 inch to 3/8 impact adapter, and I'll actually just set on right here, sits like such. And then I have a 1.25 inch shallow socket, which is 1/2 inch. So normally you would clip this onto here. Well, because this is 3/8, this is 1/2 inch, it's not going to lock on there, which is actually good. So that way it kind of spins a little bit, and it should get us where we need to be as far as the sizing, because we don't want to be too close to the center here because it'll actually just push up against this rubber. So we want to be right along this metal collar, and I think the 1.25 inch size socket here is exactly the perfect size. Setup of the jaw puller is finicky at best. Main takeaways here: make sure you take your time setting this thing up. Where the jaws meet that knuckle on the front side of it, make sure they're fully seated before you start cranking this thing down. Here is how the puller is exactly set up. The jaws on the knuckle are like such. And I have a long 1/2 inch ratcheting wrench with a 5/8 impact socket on the end of this thing, and we're just going to crank away, and every so often we'll spray a little bit of PB Blaster right here like such, and we'll keep cranking till we push this thing out of here. Here's the rear knuckle with the bushing pressed out of it. Before we put in the new one, it's a good time to clean this out. Old bushing is removed. It's not the worst by any means, but it's definitely not the greatest. It's definitely showing its age. The rubber, if you can see here, it's falling apart, so it's only really a matter of time before the bushing totally blows out and it causes a bunch of suspension issues. So as far as a replacement, you can definitely find an original equipment very similar to this for cheap. They're $10 or less. However, save yourself the time, the frustration, and go with a kit by PowerFlex right here, and I will link this in the description, but it will save you time and frustration. Is well worth the investment. It's a great solution. It's a polyurethane bushing that you press in. It's a heck of a lot simpler to put in than that. You have the bushing, you have the collar in the center, and it even comes with the appropriate grease. Like I said, don't go with an original equipment style. You're just going to cause more headaches than it's worth. Go with a company like PowerFlex. Here is the new PowerFlex bushing. And to press this in, one of these sides is actually a little bit smaller. So this side is a little bit smaller than this one. So it's going to be pressed in from this side into this spindle. If you look ever so slightly, there is a chamfered edge right here. So if you were to push out a metal bushing and press in a new one, ideally you'd probably want to press it from this side and then press the new one in from this side, because this end again is chamfered. But because we are not using a metal bushing to press back in, we are just going to press it out this direction and press in the new one the exact same direction into this knuckle like such, and then we'll place this collar inside once this polyurethane is in there. But first we need to take some of their silicone and spread it on the edges and also on the end here, so that way it makes it a little bit easier lubed up to press this thing in. You can use the 3-jaw puller that you used to press out the original bushing to press in the new bushing. Now, I devised a different method because I didn't really like the length that I had with the 3-jaw puller, so I used some stuff I had laying around, but for sure, you can definitely use that original 3-jaw puller that you used to press out the old one. Just kind of go slow. Definitely do not use an impact gun. You want to use a ratchet, go slow, that way you keep this thing on track. Once you get to this point, you can actually just push it in by hand. That's the beauty of the polyurethane, something that you cannot do with a metal bushing. In case you're wondering exactly what I devised to get that into place, basically I had the threaded end of the gear puller. I have the polyurethane bushing, as well as that crow's foot section of it that has the threaded end in it, and a very large socket. It's a 3/4 inch drive, so that way the center could go right through it. But basically, use something like this. I got a washer, slide it on the end, the bushing like that, and then goes through the knuckle, and then on the opposite side you have the threaded end. It actually presses this bushing into that knuckle, so it takes a bit of force, but this goes in much smoother than a metal replacement. Now we have the center collar. We'll put a little more of this grease on here. Rubber mallet. And here is the finalized product with that center sleeve inside the new polyurethane bushing. That is the back side. Now on the front side. Looks pretty good. So now we just need to take the jack, lift up on the bottom of this aluminum arm, and fish that bolt through. While certainly not required, it's definitely a good idea to apply a little bit of AntiSeize in here. With it being a majority threads, I don't think you really risk it freezing inside of a bushing, but this is the original one. Didn't have any issues pulling it out, and I don't want any issues in the future with this in the new bushing. So what I'm going to be doing is applying a little bit of this Permatex AntiSeize. Takes a little bit on the center of it like such. Got a little bit on here, nothing too crazy, but I think there's just enough on here so that this bolt will not freeze inside the new sleeve of the new bushing. And also too, if you ever decide to remove your coil spring, well, you do need to lower this arm down to finagle that spring out, which requires this bolt to be removed. So a little bit of AntiSeize in here is just extra insurance that this bolt will not get stuck in that new bushing. We have the 18mm nut that we will thread on the front side of this bolt. It's a E18 on this side and an 18mm for that nut. Here's the finalized product. If you're wondering the torque specs on that bolt, it gets cinched down to 55 pound-feet plus 90 degrees. So I am now going to do the opposite side. Since I got both bushings, might as well replace them both. Other bushing is in using the exact same method. If this video helped you out, be sure to give it a giant thumbs up and consider subscribing. I have a ton of stuff out there, and especially SAAB stuff. So with that being said, I appreciate you watching. Links will be in the description. And I'll catch you friends next time. Thanks for watching.